Hi, Ken Mergentime here again with Sign Business and Digital Graphics Magazine, and we're here at the Long Beach Convention Center for the Sign Business and Digital Graphics Show. And today I've got my friend Kumar, who's the Vice President and General Manager of EFI Rastek, makers of relatively inexpensive UV Cure printers. And I wanted to share 5 minutes of your time with us so we can talk about some industry issues. So Rak, the government is starting to tighten up a bit on its regulations for solvent inks and the handling of solvent inks, particularly in the state of California. This is forcing the industry to move away from solvent inks and to more green solutions.
Yes.
Well, how do you see this process evolving, especially with relation to solutions that might be available other than solvent for digital printing?
Well, I think we all agree that green is good.
Green is good.
So the question is, how do we get there?
Right.
And the two ways to get there, one is to legislate, and there are efforts along those lines. But as an industry, I think that there's a better approach. And the better approach is to make it economically more attractive for the user to not only be green, but also make more money by being green.
Right.
So to do that, you have to ask the question, well, why haven't we been able to do that? And if you look at the industry up till now, you can buy a good solvent machine for about $30,000. Mm-hmm. It produces very good quality. Operating cost is fairly low. And up till now, if you had to look at, for example, UV curable inks, even though there's some economic justification for being able to print directly onto a rigid substrate, not have to print and mount, but when you look at the price gap of $30,000 for a solvent machine and $100,000 and up for a UV machine, you know, in most cases, the customer in the end is going to vote with his dollars.
Sure.
And so our feeling is that as an industry, we have to make it more attractive for the customer or the end user to find it attractive enough to move to UV. And if you look at the last couple of years, the industry is clearly moving from these $100,000 machines to today you can buy a very good UV machine for $65,000 that gives you excellent quality and at the same time you can print directly onto rigid media. So I think as that gap becomes smaller and smaller, mm-hmm. we can get to green without having to legislate. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a better way of getting there than to forcing people to do that because of legal requirements.
Right. But isn't one of the economic issues at stake is the price of the ink itself? And
right.
I know that solvent ink is just very cheap to come by.
And again, I think it's a little bit of a catch-22 because the price of ink is really a function of the volume of ink. Mm-hmm. If you look at offset printing today, it is almost 100% UV. Mm-hmm. And if they can produce graphics at very, very competitive prices mm-hmm. or printing at very competitive pricing, there is no reason why the UV ink cannot be competitive with the solvent ink. And also with UV ink you use less ink per square foot than you do with solvent ink. So I think the issue of pricing with solvent ink versus UV ink is strictly a volume driven pricing, and we're seeing that on the high-end machines running at very, very high speeds where the price of ink has come down even in the UV space mm-hmm. to $50 a liter, which used to be $200 a liter.
So you can get more printing done with less
exactly
UV ink. Oh, okay.
You get more printing done with less ink, and at the same time, as the volume of ink goes up, the price will come down. So I think it's a natural phenomenon that's going to take place, and cost per square foot mm-hmm. with UV will become just as competitive, and in some cases it already is.
Right. And what are some of the other options available? I mean, in terms of the technology that's coming around, I know that I've heard about latex, water-based right. latex inks, and solvent inks that were made from greener sources, yes. eco-solvent.
Right. I think, when we talk about green, I think we need to look at green more in terms of not just the VOCs, the solvent inks and emissions, but we also need to look at what goes into making a print.
Right.
And what goes into making a print is clearly the emissions, it's the substrate you use, and it's also how you dry the image, cure the image. And my one concern about the water-based latex ink is that you're still dealing with water.
Sure.
And when you're dealing with water, you need the energy to evaporate all that water. Yeah. The one benefit of UV is that it is cured as opposed to dried. Mm-hmm. And as we move to the LED technology, it is extremely efficient. I mean, with a few watts of energy, you can dry the image.
That's a very good point. I wanted to hope you can elaborate on the use of LED lamps instead of
mercury lamps.
Mercury high energy lamps.
Right.
So how is that even possible to do that?
Well, I think it's again a catch-22 in the sense that today the volume of LEDs being produced in the spectrum that UV curable energy is needed is small. Most of the UV LEDs today are in visible light, whether they're traffic signs or they're car lights and so on. But I think we are getting there. We are getting to the point where slow to medium speed machines in the 100 square feet, 200 square feet per hour can be fully cured using LEDs. So I really do believe that over the next 24 months or so, we will be able to use LEDs rather than mercury lamps for most entry-level and mid-range machines.
So is that something in the future for the Rastek line?
Absolutely. I think we continue to look for ways to improve our products and make them more energy efficient, and so I do believe that in the next 24 months or so, we should get there.
Awesome. This is Ken Mergentime with Sign and Digital Graphics, and again, thanks, Rack, for stopping by.
Glad to be here.
Hope you're having a great show here.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, thanks.